Yes.
How about similarities in spirituality and shamanism around the Pacific Rims, including the United States?
Similarities in shamanism. Okay. Around the Pacific Rim, not just Hawaii, Polynesia. Okay. Of course. In fact, similarities with shamanism all around the world. That is what defines them in that category of shaman. Shaman is an arbitrary category. It's the name of a particular person in the Tungus tribe in Siberia who performed a particular function in that tribe. The term has been applied to other people who perform that kind of function in their society.
What was the function?
Now, the function that we call shamanism. Now, some of the things that are similar are communication with nature as not just the awareness that nature is alive, but the ability to communicate with it. And communication is a two-way thing. The ability to communicate with the spirit world. The ability to travel with the soul or with the spirit into other worlds for healing, for information gathering, among some of the Siberian tribes, for battle, spiritual battles. The ability to shape change, which can range all the way from acting to taking on a completely different appearance. All of these kinds of things are what we find certain people practicing all around the world. So when we find those similar things being done, that kind of grouping of skills or talents or activities, we apply the term shamanism to that.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit more about the shape changing? The shape changing, would it be done permanently, or is it sort of a temporary thing to create a certain effect?
Depends.
Okay, so there could be both, right?
Sure.
And
I'll give you a good example of. We're talking about whether shape changing, which is a shamanic technique, was done temporarily or done permanently. Most of the time, temporarily, but for a particular reason, it could become permanently, depending on what you wanted to shape change into. One modern example of modern shape changing, not by a shaman, but the technique, was done by John Wayne. John Wayne, the cowboy actor, okay, who became John Wayne. Now, John Wayne was a film name. That was not his original name. But in his early movies, he was different. But at a certain point, he began to take on certain characteristics and carry those throughout his movies, and then not only throughout his movies, but into his life. And he became recognizable by these characteristics. That was a permanent shape change.
It's not shaped his body, it remained his body, right?
He changed his personality and his behavior patterns. Now, shape changing is also used when we talk about the possibility of taking on, let's say, an animal form, as one example. In shamanic shape changing, done any form. Polynesian shape changing is really interesting because they include what we would call inanimate objects as some of the possibilities of shape changing, like a rope, okay? But typically around the world, people think of it in terms of animals. Well, let's talk about it or it can be trees or whatever, but let's talk about it in the practical terms. It's a range, it's an ability that covers a range of different behaviors and characteristics. All the way from the simplest form, which would be pretending to be a deer, or, which is common in Europe, or a kangaroo, which is common in Australia. Okay? From that pretense, just like acting a part, acting a role in a play. Okay? You're the deer. Okay. You act deer-like. That's one end of it. To the point where you do that so well that when people look at you, they think of a deer immediately. to the point where the deer think you're a deer, to the point which we shall call theoretical, because for our modern audience this has never been demonstrated in a laboratory. Okay? The theoretical transformation of the whole body shape and structure. Okay? If you stop to think about it, since we're all energy, that transformation is only a rearrangement of our energy. So theoretically possible. You would have to, of course, be able to do it. You would have to, for instance, if you wanted to transform yourself into a physical deer, you would really have to know deer well.
DNA and all that.
You'd have to know a lot about deer. Okay? You have to be beyond expert status. And there would have to be a real, not only a knowing, there would have to be a real love to get your whole self to move into that pattern. All of this is theoretically possible. Okay? In between, there's an in-between range. The in-between range is where it's possible not to have to physically transform your body, but to project the illusion of having transformed your body. Because after all, what people are going to relate to is what they can smell and what they can see. And it's much easier to fool the eye than it is to do the physical transformation.
It's also mental picture sending.
More than a mental picture sending. That would not be enough. It would have to be done on a level that all the senses of a person would respond.
Oh, that's an also not one.
Okay? But anyway, sure. That I've seen. That one I know. Done so well that I couldn't really tell you if I've actually seen the physical transformation or not. But the illusion of transformation, yeah, I've had a number of experiences with that. Yeah.
I'm also curious what you think of Lance, about it. There's this author, Linda Goodman, who said that you can work with your cellular program and fast forward yourself back in age and forward if you want to. What do you know about that? It's all energy, right?
Here's the thing. We're talking about transforming your physical appearance, age backwards and forwards if you want to. Well, now we get back to theoretical, okay? And the reason is this. In Huna, this philosophy that's underlying all the healing work that we do, there's a principle that says there are no limits. A corollary of that is anything is possible if you know how to do it. Well, if anything is possible, then yes, of course, it's theoretically possible to change the appearance of your body to whatever age you choose. But you have to know how to do that. Saying you can do it is not the same thing as doing it. Okay? And so the ability to do it is the only limitation, and that's not a real limitation, that's a limitation of knowledge and skill.
Was there such knowledge and skill in Hawaii, or are you
As far as I know, the Hawaiians never expressed any interest in changing the age look, because older people were highly respected. They remained strong, too, until they decided to go. Okay? There's nothing that says that you have to get weak as you get old. Nothing whatsoever. The only reason weakness happens is because we build up and retain too much tension. Okay? But they didn't think that what we today would call an old-looking person, they didn't think of that as ugly or bad or anything. It was something highly respected. Okay? So it's a very much a cultural thing when we get into that. Yes? No?
Going back to the animal shape-shifting, I had a friend who had an experience with it. A couple of her friends, there was a group of people doing a hallucinogen. Her two friends had seen her as her power animal. They didn't know what her power animal
Right.
was, and she had no awareness. She didn't feel like the power animal or anything like that. Just wondered if you want to talk about power animals or how.
Oh, sure.
Any insight about that?
One of the things I didn't mention about shamans, typically or all around the world, is this concept of power animals. Now, sometimes they have different ideas about them, but the concept in general of having power animals both in spirit and their representations in the physical world. Okay? Very common with shamanism all around the world. It takes various forms in different cultures, and even in the cultures, various forms with different teachers or different families. For instance, in my family, we had a family, one of the terms for this in Hawaii, in this context, is aumakua. And different families in the islands have different animal aumakuas, guardian spirits like. Okay, they more than just guardians, but call them guardian spirits. Some of them have sharks, some of them have lizards, some of them have owls, some of them have different things. In my family, we had two from both sides. One was the owl and one was the dolphin. But in addition to that, in my shamanic training, I learned how to connect with 14 different animals. 7 in the sea and 7 on the land. And learn how to use them for healing and helping purposes. A lot of that work had to do with using their help in traveling in the inner world, but they could also be called upon to help with healing in this outer world as well, spiritually. Okay? This is the way they're typically used in shamanic cultures. Okay? In some cultures, the power animal comes to you. You have no choice as to what it's going to be. In other cultures, your shaman teacher assigns you a power animal. In other cultures, you have to go searching for one. So it varies with different cultures and in the particulars. But the concept is common. Yeah. When I was in Africa, West Africa, studying shamanism there for 7 years, my power animal there was the panther. And I had a very strong connection, kind of sensory emotional connection with that animal. When I came back to the States, I was not trying to project being a panther at all. I wasn't trying to shape change. I wasn't trying to do anything like that. And people, I'd go around, would be teaching or going different places, and people would send me birthday cards or just a card of hello or a picture that they liked that they thought I'd like. And I get all these panther pictures from all over the place. Okay? They were picking up on something that I was broadcasting unconsciously. Yeah.
I wonder, whenever I was thinking about myself that I've ever been an animal, I always get this image of Black Panther.
Okay.
So this is the only animal, I guess I can call that a power animal? Or?
Only if you're using it for power.
Now, I've never used it for power, but when I worked with Fern once to get through something, some reason it's not the Black Panther that I usually associate myself with. It's the crocodile came out, and I have no connection to crocodile. So I'm just curious, how do you pick which is your power animal then?
Well, if you're asking me, if you get more than one animal come in an inner world situation, how do you pick which one to be your animal? Well, see, from my tradition, that's not a problem. I got 14, okay? And so, hey, you want to come and be my power animal for this journey? No problem with me. Okay?
So for that particular journey, the crocodile was appropriate.
That's fine. See? Again, since you're not coming from a particular shamanic culture that you were brought up in and trained in, you can do whatever you want. In some cultures, you would have to refuse one animal and wait for your own. In other cultures, whoever wants to come, be my friend. See? When you are first learning these things, you have much more flexibility now because you're not bound by the rules. As a matter of fact, I broke out of the rules of my family because sometimes 14 is not enough. Okay?
Why is animals so important? When if you look at European aristocracy, they all had animals in their family flags and family.
Sure.
So why is it so important? It seems like a worldwide humans connect with animals because it empowers them. Animals are stronger.
Why are human beings so fascinated with animals that they use them for symbols so much? This is what the question is. Well, there's two things involved in there. One is our animal heritage. You know, some human beings forget that we're animals, right? Unusual animals, no doubt about that, but we are animals. And we share the same heritage on this earth, being formed out of the same materials, breathing the same air, eating the same food in different forms. We are animals. Some people like to say we're more than that. I don't have any argument with that, if you like. But we are animals. Can't get away from that part. Okay? As long as we're in these bodies on this planet. Well, so from very distant times, from our ancestors, where did they go to learn about living? This is one of the most powerful attributes that human beings have, is this ability to imagine. And that ability to imagine includes imagining doing what something else is doing. That's how we've developed dance and music and technology and all kinds of other stuff. We look at something, we say, wow, is that neat, how that bird is flying. I wonder if I could do that. Now, you don't find lions and tigers doing that very much. Okay? But human beings have this ability to imagine something. Okay? So, when human beings were in the process of expanding their abilities, they had to look for models as ways to do that because they didn't have the personal experience. The models are all out there, all around us. And so they looked at those models, they picked those models, and they sought to copy the characteristics of those models. It's one reason why in Tai Chi and Qigong and some of the Eastern martial arts, so many of the movements have to do with animals. Because in developing these fighting abilities, they looked to the animals to see what they did. And with their imagination, they incorporated that into human terms and continued to relate it to the animal source. So when you see these various animals on, flags and banners and shields and things like this, it's because at some point that family wanted to pass on that kind of characteristic down to the other members of the family. Made that a point of pride or a model to aspire to. But it comes out of our animal heritage and where we learned most of what we know.
Actually, I just wanted to add something, that there is an octopus that can change its shape to look like a flounder, to look like various types of fishes
Sure.
in the sea. So the animals actually can even change their shapes.
Many animals can, of course they can. Sure.
I don't know any others, but
There are many others. There are insects that can look like leaves, insects that can look like sticks. There are fish that can look like bigger fish than they really are. We find that all through the animal world. That's where human beings learned that idea. Okay?